Welcome to the Evolved Caveman podcast. I am Dr. John, the guide for your heroic journey towards greater health, success, and most importantly, happiness. And now, on with the show. Hey everybody, this is Dr. John, and a quick PSA regarding my new virtual men's group that meets on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time. There's only a few spots left, but I thought you might want to know about it. It's a quick, easy, and cheap way to work with me. And maybe some of you have a career. Maybe you've made some money. Maybe you have a reputation for yourself at work. But maybe what you lack is things like happiness or purpose, a fulfilling relationship, or a healthy sex life. The passion, happiness, and ease that you once had with your spouse. An emotion other than numbness, disconnection, or irritability. This group is for men who are trying to be values-driven, interested in lifelong learning, and curious about how to become the best possible versions of themselves. The group is not for men who want to remain in the comfort zone while sitting at home watching TV. So again, group meets weekly, Wednesday, 7 p.m. It's only $95 per session, and you can call 510-863-0057 for more details. That's 510-863-0057. And now, on with the show. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. John back with another episode of the Evolved Caveman podcast. And today I am really thrilled to have with me Bob Conlin. And Bob is the author of Why My Relationship Sucks. And I'm going to have Bob introduce himself today because I can't read. And that's because not because I can't read, but because my vision is quite messed up. So Bob, take it away.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. As John said, my name is Bob Conlin. I'm a men's alchemist, coach, author, leader, husband, and father. I believe relationships we have with ourselves, those we love, and those we lead have the greatest impact on our life experiences. Powerful and lifting relationships are created once we get connected to and responsible for our generational traumas, triggers, and limiting beliefs about what's actually possible in our lives. My unique and courageous approach to creating relationships has been featured on ABC World News Tonight, CBS, NBC, Good Morning America, and most popular social media outlets. I have extensive training as an ontological coach, Gottman Institute trained. I'm a master certified coach with the International Coach Federation, president of the ICF Chicago chapter, co-founder of the Alchemy of Men, and co-founder of the Living Love Incubator program. As John said, my latest book, Why My Relationships Suck, Create Strong Relationships with Courage and Heart, can be found at Barnes & Noble. So good to be here, man.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have you here. And we were just talking before we got on the air. I wanted to talk a little bit about physical difficulties and what we've had and how that affects our masculinity, among other things, or our perception of masculinity. Because as I was saying to you before, my left eye is filled with blood right now, and I can't see as a result of 10 retinal tears about 3 weeks ago that, took 4 injections into the eyeball and an hour of laser to try and heal or scar those tears so that I wouldn't have a retinal detachment, which I've already had them in the right eye, along with 3 surgeries going back to 2015.
Wow.
So, it's one thing to lose one eye. It's quite a different thing to lose the one remaining good eye, or at least have that as a possibility. And so now I'm looking at the exact same surgery that I had before on the right eye, on my left eye, followed by a week laying face down, looking at the floor in order to recover. And it made me think of some other surgeries that I've had and other experiences that I've had where I've had these odd thoughts of, I'm less of a man now. And so I just wanted to open that up to you to see if you've had any of those experiences where, due to physical decline or physical illness or injury, that you've ever had some of those thoughts.
Yeah, of course. And man, sorry you're going through that.
Thank you so much.
Imagine. I had an eye injury about a month ago and knocked me on my ass. And I know how impactful like not having the vision that you're accustomed to can be, man. So
are you okay now?
Yeah. Thankfully, I have a couple more appointments on the books, but I mentor this young boy, and he loves basketball, which I hate. And so we were playing basketball, and he did a half court shot, bounced off the rim and ricocheted, like hit perfectly into my eye, contusion, tear, retinal, like severe scratch and cornea scratch. And yeah, it was pretty intense, but yeah, for the most part, I'm back to normal. But yeah, man, it's a good topic. I think so much of how I relate to myself as a man is how I experience myself in my body. Right. And, I've had a number of pretty significant surgeries. I had a spine surgery on my neck. I've had some hernia surgeries. And both of those experiences really took me out of my body. Right. Like I went from, I'm a pretty active guy. I love to lift weights. I love to feel strong. And when that's taken away from me, I do really feel lost. And I love that, that's kind of getting tied to our masculinity and how we relate to ourselves as men, because it's a good correlation to understand, because when that's taken away, or if it's taken away, then what happens?
Right.
How do you reinvent or how do you reintegrate the experience of being a man if your body's not up to par with where you expect it to be? And I, recently I've been, my wife and I, we've been in a conversation probably for about a year. We made the decision that we're no longer going to have children, or we're not going to have any more children. We have one son. He's just about 3. We had a really traumatic pregnancy where we almost lost him. Like they gave us a less than 1% chance that he wouldn't make it. And he's here. He's completely awesome. He's totally
fantastic.
Normal. But like I'm 47, she's 44, and we're just, our bodies are done. And having kids is such a young person's game, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we were talking about, hey, should I go get the snip? Should I get a vasectomy? And like without thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, sure, it sounds great. Like fine, no worries. I scheduled the consult. And then the more I sat with it, the more I noticed how it was really eating at me, to the point where I canceled the consult and didn't even tell my wife. And I was like, man, it's, I started creating a story of, if that happened, when I was like castrated, I was like being very significant about it. But when I get the vasectomy, like I even shared, I was like, it makes me feel like I'm less than a man. If I don't have, like, or it takes some power away from me or something. And then I would go into these fantasies about like, oh, what if my wife left me and I met a new woman and I, couldn't conceive and she wanted kids and then she'd leave me. And I totally like spiraled and catastrophized all around it. And like the thing I did was, I think by default, I don't share a lot of my challenges, or I haven't. I kind of keep that stuff inside. And what I've learned is that there's so much power and so much possibility in being vulnerable and actually getting that stuff out and sharing it, particularly with another men and particularly with a group of men. So there's a men's group I'm in that's run by Traver Boehm called the Uncivilized Nation. And, I'm part of that men's group, and I brought my concern to the group. And a lot of the guys that I look up to and respect and have helped me, they're like, yeah, I got it. It's no big deal. I was down for a couple of days. And like, I was like, oh man, if these men have had that, it just helped me feel a little more comfortable in making the decision. And one of the guys brought up a really good question to me that had me kind of stop in my tracks. He's like, well, what is your definition of a man? And for me, like I had to, there's something that we talk a lot about in the men's groups I run is with the Alchemy of Men is what is your definition of masculinity? Or what is your definition of being a man? And very much so, I'm still like figuring that out. Yeah. 47 years old, I've been a man my whole life, and I'm still discovering and figuring that out.
Well, and thank you for sharing all that. I think that's why the topic is so fascinating to me, because I think you're absolutely right. It's not about what my definition of masculinity is for you. It's about what is your definition of masculinity for you. And I think we find out along the way, especially as we're getting older, that some of these things that we thought, oh, I can do that, no problem, actually psychologically and emotionally can have a pretty big impact. And I got a vasectomy back after I got divorced, because I was like, I think I was in probably about your same age, 46 or so. And I was like, I don't want any more kids. So it was my choice. I drove it, and I was scared before I had it done, number one. And I remember I asked the doctor, I was like, can you give me like a sedative or something for this? He's like, oh, it's no big deal. He's like, just have a couple tequila shots before you come in. That's what my brother-in-law did. And I was like, that doesn't sound very doctor-like, but okay.
Right.
But I ended up not doing that. But the procedure wasn't bad. It's scary just because you're not used to having any procedure done down there. But I remember afterwards, for the first like 24 hours, I had these thoughts. And, I make the distinction between first voice and second voice in our head, where the first voice is kind of that primitive, emotional, atavistic side of ourselves. And it was that first voice in me saying, wow, you're less of a man now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't have kids. And I was like, the second voice was like, wow, that's really messed up. Like, I wonder, why do you think that? Why is that such a big deal? Even when rationally you don't want any more kids. And so I think I appreciate you going there, because I think it's important for men to hear this, that there are things like this that do affect our definition of our masculinity, or our perception of masculinity. And I had spinal surgery too, during COVID. And that impacts it too, because then you're on your back, you're reliant on others for help, which I think is hard for most of us. And I think it's also a great humbling experience to be in a position where you have to ask for help. And I think it's one of the necessary lessons for us. And so I just want the men out there that are listening to understand that those thoughts are normal. It doesn't mean that they're true or accurate, but I think that they're normal for many of us.
Yeah, 100%. And, realizing that you're not alone in that is so important and so powerful to help move through it, to help us all move through it. And, one of the things I'm present to too is, I think a lot of men, define their masculinity or define who they are as men by what they can do. Right. And when we have that, especially in that physical body, when we have that impacted or taken away from us, it forces us to really cultivate or nurture or discover who we are as men by who we be, or the energy that we bring into things. Right. So in my mind, I immediately go to, part of my definition is living a life of integrity. Do my thoughts, do my actions and words all align with who I say I want to be? Am I showing up daily for my commitments? Am I, creating a container of safety and holding for, those that I love in my life, right? Am I like a grounding force? And those are all experiences that, along with the body, when it's healthy and moving along, I think, that integration of understanding what it means to be, or to be a man, like the being aspect, the energetic aspect, is so critical to have that level of awareness. So if the doing or the physical body gets taken out, we still have something to hold on to.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you. I think that's how we're socialized, in terms of, we understand ourselves, we understand our masculinity and our worth through our physicality.
Yep.
Because when we're younger, it's all compete. It's, be physical. It's win. It's, you're only as good as your last accomplishment. And those accomplishments are typically tallied in terms of competition, wins and losses. And
how much can you bench?
What's that?
So how much can you bench?
Yeah. Or did you win your last game, whatever that game is?
Yeah.
It's all about numbers. And we're not socialized in terms of, psychological maturity, emotional maturity, relational maturity, spiritual maturity, wisdom, the things that you were just saying. And so I think we largely over-identify with our physical being, and to a large extent with the thinker in our head as well.
Yeah. And, it's not that's a bad, it's a bad thing, that, we're so identified and connected to our, our physical strength, or, what our achievements, things like that. But there's so much more, right? And tapping into like the full energetic experience of yourself, in my experience, just really provides much more to life. Like there's more joy, there's more connectedness, there's more intimacy, particularly in relationships. There's more power behind my impact of who I am as a leader, as a father, as a husband. And, ultimately, like if, we're not growing and experiencing ourselves in service of having an extraordinary life, having an incredible life, living life to its fullest, like time's ticking. Like we have the opportunity and potential to have so much more for our lives. And I think a lot of us don't recognize that or don't see the value in tapping into the full integrated self.
And I absolutely 100% agree with you. I think there's nothing wrong with identifying with the physical or with the intellectual. It's just that there's so much more to us than that. And to limit ourselves to just those gears, so to speak, is inherently limiting. And so to have the ability to tap into the emotional or the spiritual or the relational are things that we're not taught and we're not encouraged to do. And yet they're so incredibly important.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was one of the co-founder for Alchemy, Alex Terranova, who's been who you know personally and has been a guest here.
I love Alex.
He just got married, and we were in Tulum in Mexico, and they've got this like caveman jungle gym thing there, and like I was like, I've been working on throwing up some big weight, some heavy weight, and one of the goals I wanted to have this year was to get stronger, and I ended up benching like 315 pounds, which is like the most I've ever benched. And it felt good. And it was, it was a good milestone to hit for me. And Alex, in his social media had mentioned something about, kind of the Andrew Tate way of looking at masculinity. And he just got shredded by all these guys and, attacking his masculinity and who he was as a man. And one of the things that he posted was like, yeah, this is to let everyone know that you're not a soy boy, like as a kind of a joke, right? Like that.
Oh, gotcha. Because that was one of the insults that he got.
Yeah. I can throw up that weight. And my response to him was, yeah. And I can also cry. And I can, sometimes I bench and cry at the same time, so, it was kind of like a little joke, but it was just like, man, having access to that, like you talk at head, heart, body, heart, whatever, like having access to that, that emotional side of yourself and that, maybe you might call it like the feminine characteristics of self is critical, man. Like it's critical to live your most fullest productive life in every aspect, right? Career.
Well, and I think I love the idea, like, sorry for interrupting. I love the idea tears aren't a show of weakness. They're a show of strength.
Yeah.
And, and we know from research that there's cortisol in our tears, and cortisol is the hormone connected to stress. So tears are actually a physical release of stress and overwhelm. And if you don't have access to that, you're going to bottle it up and take it out on others. And the other thing that comes to mind is, speaking of kind of balancing masculine and feminine energies, I remember I've never reached out more for help than I have in this past week or two. And, I talked with a spiritual, I guess, mentor of mine over in Switzerland. And I was telling him that I was having trouble with my left eye. And he said, well, generally the left eye or the left side of the body is the feminine side of the body. Because when I interviewed him on the podcast, I made a joke about, never wanting to masturbate with my right hand again, because, that would be gay. Sorry, just a little joke there. But so anyways, he was saying, so what message are you not receiving from the feminine within you? What are you not seeing? What are you not hearing? And I was like, I don't think about that.
Yeah. Wow.
Because, obviously there's a physical reason for this, but there's more to it than just that, I would argue as well. And that's the question I've been asking myself is, what am I not seeing? What am I supposed to see more clearly? And I think it has to do with my relationship with Jory, whom I'm, working on rebuilding that relationship after a couple months of breakup. Yeah. And that's never been going better. That repair effort has been bearing a lot of fruit. And so it's just, I think it's fascinating to have your defenses broken down, to be humbled to tap back into that curiosity and be able to look at things maybe more honestly and clearly than you ever have.
Yeah, sure. That, and then what is the prerequisite to that is, that vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Is opening yourself up in that way. What was it like for you, or what has it been like for you to ask for help in more ways than you're accustomed to?
Thank you for the question. It's a hell of a question.
Yeah.
It's something I've been working on for the past few years. And I realized that I was not very good at it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally have not asked for help at all because I'm a man. And,
Right.
And so realizing that was a weakness and that it was kind of biting me in the ass at times, I've started to begin to reach out at times. And it's inevitably rewarding, rejuvenating, informative. It feels good because it gives other people a chance to show that they care about me.
Mm-hmm.
What's been your experience with asking for help?
Yeah, my inability to ask for help literally almost killed me. It was one of the hardest things I had to learn in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s. I got into some really heavy drugs. And, I'd always kind of, even as a young kid, mess around with alcohol and weed and stuff like that. But then things just progressed at a rate that was unsustainable. And as they call it hitting your bottom, as I was hitting my bottom, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I got to the point where I needed significant help, medical help, emotional help. I needed to be sent somewhere,
Yeah,
and get the help that I needed. And the whole time, I knew like my heart knew that what you're doing is going to kill you. This is not going to get better. You need help. But my brain was like, I got this.
uh-huh.
I had such a strong, growing up the way I did, I created, and I think a lot of men do anyway, just how society trains us is to have this real strong self-sufficient streak.
Oh yeah.
To not need anyone, and to need anyone as weakness, or to, you better just man up and figure it out yourself, work harder, whatever it was. And I had become paralyzed by my addiction, to the point to where, I didn't know how to ask for help, I think, essentially. And, thank God I had an intervention at work, and, 5 people pulled me into a room, and basically, that started my recovery. And one of the people in the room, as I was, kind of going, fessing up and sharing what I've been doing, she mouthed to me, "Get help." And I was just like, even then, man, I was like, I got it. I don't need help. And long story short, what pushed me into getting help was all the circumstances that got created around my behavior. I was losing my wife was, threatening to divorce me, which she ultimately did. I was losing my job. I had the DEA knocking on my door. I had a lot of circumstances. So I was like, I'm going to go get help just to fix all this stuff. And when I was there, so I went to rehab. I was there for 4 months, and a couple of weeks in, what I had realized, a little bit of clarity in the drugs, detoxing out of my system, was man, I needed this help my entire life. Because my using and my drinking and my drug use was just a symptom. It's just a symptom of something else. And what I've come to find out was just that I, through that self-sufficiency, I created a lot of barriers to receiving love. At the most core fundamental level, was so I would put walls up in relationships, or, I wouldn't share freely. I would hold back on things that I actually wanted to do just to people please others. Right. So I was constantly navigating this, falsity, this false life. I wasn't really connected to who I am, B, what I want, and see like this, having something greater outside of myself to tap into.
Man, you're hitting on so many key issues.
Yeah, I know,
there.
man.
I mean, like
dropping it in,
the having something bigger than self is a huge value or goal to strive for. Self-transcendent goals, big deal.
Yeah,
I think so many of us are stuck in pursuing our own wealth, fame, and power. And I can't tell you how many men I've talked to that are 50 and worth a bunch of money and just miserable.
totally.
But yeah, and thank you for sharing all that. And I think one of the biggest problems, and I guess I'll say for men, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, is that I've seen is this lack of intellectual humility. The idea that we think we know it all, the thing that we get indignant when someone tries to tell us to consider something different, a new perspective. And I think that if we can hold on to this idea of curiosity and the idea of knowing just how much we don't know is a good first step.
Yeah, there's this this really cool distinction that the Landmark Forum goes through about our knowledge, right? Like we know what we know, and we know what we don't know. Like, for example, like I know I don't know how to perform brain surgery, right? Like I know that, right? I know how to play bass guitar, right? Like I know that stuff. But they talk about you not knowing what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And that was like, a huge invitation for me to like get a little more curious and open my mind and heart up to more possibility for what's available in my life. Like how do I know I can't, meet the woman of my dreams at 42? Like, how do I know that I won't be a father? How do I know that I won't run a successful, fulfilling business? Like, we start to see all these limitations, right? And I run across this a lot in the men that reach out to me to talk about potentially working with me, is that they think I have the answers, or like I know, I have the knowledge that they don't have, and I'm just going to tell them what to do, right? Which as a coach is, I might share some of that, but the main purpose of that is having them discover their own truth, their own knowledge, like the answers to the questions that they have. Those answers are already inside them.
Yeah.
But there's so much crap in the way to dig it out. And that's where I come in with the shovel.
You're like Socrates asking the right questions.
Right. Or questions that no one's in their life is asking them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's an important conversation to be in. And it's important to have, at least someone you trust and can build a relationship with to help guide through that. But yeah, man, there's, I think that self-knowledge, right? Or that kind of that relationship to where you think you know what you know, or you think you know everything, paired with, a big self-sufficient streak, like that's a recipe for pain. It's a recipe for a lot of disconnection. And, that's why we see, I think a lot of the stats that we see with men, they're dying earlier, they're killing themselves more, they're more unfulfilled, they have less friends than they've had, and they're more depressed and undiagnosed. Like it's catching up, it's catching up.
So let me circle back and ask a question that I forgot and now remembered. You were talking about having difficulty receiving love earlier in life. And I think that's another really common theme. Again, I'll say for men, I'm not sure it's just for men, but I'll say for men. How are you now with your ability to receive love?
Great question. And like the thing I'll say is like, I still have my challenges with it. In my own work and like the work I do with a lot of my folks is that, our stuff is still our stuff. Our challenges, our, internal barriers, our criticisms, our judgments, our complaints, our fears, that stuff in my mind and what I've seen, it never goes away. But what gets to change or transform is your relationship to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I think about when I'm feeling, some discontent in my life, or I'm irritated or overwhelmed, I can always bring that down to two core fundamental aspects, right? Love and fear. And if I'm tapping more into fear, I'm essentially I'm pushing love away in some way. And I see that a lot in my, in my marriage. My wife, she's extraordinary. She's such an incredible woman, and she's very patient.
Thank God.
And thank God, right? And like one of the most beautiful things that we've created in our relationship is that we are mirrors for each other's healing.
Yeah, isn't it wild?
It's wild, man. It's
go into that concept a little bit, because that's profound.
Yeah. So she, like in this kind of like where I'm pushing love away, right? She can like reflect that back to me and not have it mean anything about her. Mm-hmm. She knows it's my stuff. And then she can hold that space, or she's such a powerful woman. She'll call me forward into it. She'll invite me into shifting my way of being or shifting my actions that would actually allow me to receive. And I think the biggest dynamic where we see that now is with us co-parenting our son, right? Like my son, he's such a catalyst for my growth and development in so many ways.
They're great teachers.
Oh my God, man. Like I had no idea what he would be bringing forth. And, one thing I noticed was, like when he's a toddler, like his primary form of communication is like freaking out, is having a temper tantrum, is like crying. Right.
Yep.
And like, it would take me out, man. It would trigger me. It would like, I would just want to run, or I would get angry or upset, or, like it just really was.
And, from an evolutionary perspective, that's intended to do that.
Yeah.
It's intended to get you to respond at a deep level to their need.
Yeah.
And then it often can flood and overwhelm us, which I know it did for me when I was a new parent.
100%. And my wife, my wife said something to me. She's like, "Hey, I need to share something with you." And I was like, "What?" And she's like,
"Did you say just like that?"
Probably, yeah, probably. And she's like, when Forrest, our son, when he gets upset and cries, I feel like I have to deal with two toddlers and not just one. Meaning, like I'm the other toddler.
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm with you. I know.
Yeah, and like the awareness, or the thing I got to was like, the space he has to cry and express and like freak out, right? Like he's got all that space in the world. And like, I didn't as a kid, like it was, I'll give you something to cry about, or, children are seen, not heard kind of context. Yep. Right. So like, it was triggering me, like first, like, hey, how the hell does he get away with that? Why does he get to do that? And I don't. Yeah. And the second, like more kind of profound thing was like, dude, stop crying, because we're not safe. Like, man, like, shut up. Like, this is not safe to do this. And,
can I jump in there? Because I think there's another piece there also. When I was in your shoes as a young parent, my child would like skin their knee and start crying, wailing. And because of my empathy, it would fill me with such discomfort internally that I couldn't handle my own discomfort. And then it would come out as anger.
Yep.
And I really had to look at that and be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, they just fell and hurt themselves and I'm getting mad. Like, that's a mess. Like, I need to work on that.
Yeah, man. 100%. Yeah. I have that same, or it's like, oh God, here we go again. Like, or it'll be like such an inconvenience for me that my son hurt himself.
Or you can man box your 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Dude, stop being such a little bitch.
Yeah, suck it up, man.
You don't say that, but
yeah.
But it's all the variations on that, right? Like, suck it up. Yeah, like toughen up. Like, it's good for you. Feel the pain. Eat the pain.
Rub some dirt on it. Yeah.
Shit some nails out. Yeah. They never said that, but I just,
Yep. Yeah, man.
So, so the ability to receive love, I think, is a really fascinating topic, because I know, like, in my relationship with my partner, I don't think that I could fully grasp or feel the extent to which she loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe I get, I don't know if I had to guess, 80% of it, but I'm really trying to work on expanding that to get closer to 100%, to really, really fathom the depths of her love for me. Because that at some level, I think, is frightening for me.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's
because if someone loves me that much, they can also hurt me. That's one part. And the other part is, how the hell can someone love me so much?
Right.
And that gets to self-worth.
Yeah. Or what's wrong with them that they love me this way? Yeah. Right. Like,
yeah.
That's the one that I noticed what coming up for me is like, man, if a woman like that can love me as much as she does, like, what the hell's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
What trauma did she have?
Right. Right. Or like, man, if she only knew, she only really saw.
But that's, I mean, that's the other way to get through that is by being vulnerable and sharing all those dark, shameful parts of ourselves over time. And then they do actually know who you are.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty fulfilling experience also.
Yeah. If I were to ask like another question is, have you identified like what's in the gap for you to get to that like 100% full receive of love from Jory?
Geez, another good question. Actually, it's funny. I think part of it has been going through difficulty and challenge. I think we broke up. I broke up with her, and it was about 2.5 months, and it was really, really fucking painful. I mean, for both of us, and I was tremendously humbled and broken down at a new level. And I think that process of being broken down and her being willing to come back to me or being open to another chance, at some level really helped show me how much she loves me. I think that the willingness that I've had recently to do whatever it takes to win her back, whether that's, going to an intensive couples counseling weekend or seeing couples counselor or looking at my own worst traits and patterns of behavior that have been in existence for as long as I'm aware. And then seeing some growth in those areas. I think all that stuff shows me just how deep that love is and to begin to trust it more. And I think that's a big part of it is trusting that it will remain, that it will stay there. And I think that goes back to, stuff in childhood, right? That I don't know that was something I could trust, that it was very conditional when I was younger.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I think like the thing coming up for me in that is I think so many of us look for like the proof or the evidence that we're loved. Right. And then, I think, especially for men, like, we have some pretty fundamental needs of feeling acknowledged and appreciated for like all the stuff we do. Right. And a lot of the couples that I work with, I see a huge breakdown in that is that the men just feel underappreciated or like under encouraged or under, accepted. And that feeds into this barrier that gets built to love. And, and it's like a prove it to me, right? Like I need this prove it to me versus like you just kind of mentioned there is trusting, is just trusting that this other human being who's decided to spend their life with me, like does love me,
And for me, that trust gets back to self-worth and a lack of it. Yeah. And I think that's a really common theme too. But if my self-worth is rocky, if it's fluctuating, then how can I trust that love is going to be there for someone like me?
Yeah.
At a deep level. And I think that's also connected to shame. But, back to your earlier point, one of the things I was thinking about before we got on air was this idea that fascinates me, because I think when we fall in love with someone, pick a trait, right? We fall in love with the trait. We see it through rose-colored lens. We see it all positive. So when I fall in love with someone, oh my God, she's a great planner. She's super organized. She's on top of it. She's determined. fast forward 6-7 years, and you have all those hurts, anger, resentment, annoyances that add up over time, those small drops of resentment, and your lens goes from all positive to mostly negative. And then the same trait that you fell in love with now becomes a negative. So now she's a controlling in your mind. And the funny thing about that to me is she hasn't changed. Your perception of her has changed. And that fascinates me. So then if you look at the relationship as a mirror for your own shit, and I look at, okay, so wait, what? So I'm judging her for being controlling. What is it in me that needs to be controlled? What is it I like about being controlled? And I think, from there you can go to something like, well, if she's controlling, then it takes a lot of weight off me for making decisions, for example. And that's kind of the interesting process that I think you go through to unpack some of this shit.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Again, that's why, like our most important relationships are our greatest teachers if we allow them to be, And, like the things that it's such an interesting dynamic that plays out, like the things that we once, admire and love about our partners are the things that, we start to use as evidence to build a case against as to why, they're not the one, or they're going to leave me, or, I gotta bail, I gotta get out of this relationship. And, again, it fundamentally goes back down to, I think self-worth, self-love, like truly understanding, the value that you are, right? Like the gift that you are, which I think, if we bring this back to full circle, like it's why it's so critical to understand who you are as a man, understand what your definition of that is, because if we have these physical or these body changes and challenges that come up, it's going to rock the foundation of all of that,
right?
All of it, yeah.
So let's go. We only got, I think, about 10 minutes left. I can't really see the clock, but let's go a little bit into your book, Why My Relationship Sucks.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like we've hit on, I'm assuming we've hit on a number of these topics, but tell me a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So, it was a book that, I didn't know I had in me, but like once I started writing it was clear it was there, wanting to come out for quite a while. And I started writing after I met my wife. And the reason, or like the way I was able to meet my wife and create a relationship with her is because I started taking on so much relational work in my life. I had prior to meeting her, I just ended another 7-year relationship. I'd gone through a divorce, and one of the biggest ahas I had was, so much of my relationship experience was unfulfilling, disconnected, not getting my needs met. And the biggest aha I got in that was the common denominator in all those relationships was me. Right.
Don't you hate that?
Oh, yeah. And like almost totally. I'm like,
fucking hate that.
But like all of my relationships, they all kind of ended in the same way. It was like hot and heavy and like great and awesome. And then just like, they got so sick of my shit. They were like, I'm out of here. Right. And, the book, it's, certainly me telling my own story, me, training and teaching how to be in a relationship, because there's no class in school where like, this is how you create relationships, right? Which I think there should be, but and I share some stories of some of the clients that I've worked with, but ultimately, it's about taking radical responsibility in how you show up to relationships, how you create them. And, when conflict and challenges come up, when, not if, but when they come up, how do you navigate them in a loving way that can actually allow and promote some healing for both sides, for both. And
and allow your partner to hear you, which is probably the biggest challenge a lot of times.
Yeah. And two, like, I think there's a lot of we go into relationships like confused, or we're distracted by, just like the physicalness of early relationships. But and that can make us make decisions that we ultimately, or settle for people or circumstances that ultimately aren't what we want. So a lot of it too is about getting crystal clear on the experience of a relationship that you want, getting crystal clear on the characteristics of a potential partner that you want to discover, right? And the books for anyone, anyone in relationship, whether that's you're looking for one, you're looking to improve one, or you're looking to get out of one, right? I think those are kind of the three arenas that we play in inside a relationship.
Yeah.
So there's some practical advice. There's a lot of storytelling, because I think when people understand that they're not alone in their relationship experience or their relationship journey and how they're trying to create it, again, that provides a little more understanding of what's actually going on. And
I'm a big fan of sharing stories as a way to teach.
Yeah.
And normalize.
100%. Yeah.
I think it's a huge, especially for men, because we don't want to ask questions. We don't want to ask for help. Okay, so let me share this part of my story and see if you can, if this resonates with you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it challenged me in so many ways too. And, my wife, like once the book came out, and she read it, we were going through something, and she approached me and she's like, "Where's the man that wrote this book? Like, how come he's not here right now?" And it was just like, oh my God.
And that brings up an interesting phenomenon too, like what that we go away in some way. Because I just experienced that with a depressive episode with Jory, where I was not myself for several months. Yeah, and I couldn't get out of it, and I couldn't really see it very clearly. But I was gone.
Yep.
With her, and it just brings up this interesting phenomenon, like, where's the man that wrote this book?
Totally. And again, like that's and that's the beauty of having a relationship that works, right? Is that she could reflect that to me and call me forward and be like, you're right. I haven't been acting in line with my commitment to you, or I haven't been showing up and loving you in a way that I said I would, or that matters, right? I haven't been your partner. We've been opponents versus teammates, and it's.
And do you have any other agreed upon ways that she can get into you, so to speak, when you're not yourself, because to me, it's like it's about being irritable. It's about being a little bit depressed. It's about being stressed and, you're elsewhere. Like we're thinking about work all the time. Do you have any agreed upon ways to?
Yeah, she'll, so we've done and do a lot of inner child work. I've done some stuff through some 12-step programs, some additional training I've had. We do some inner child work in the couples program that we run, but she'll check in. She'll be like, "Hey, what does little Bobby need?" And oftentimes I'll be, like my first response is like, "Leave me alone," but that again, that's that barrier to love. But she'll know, like, if I'm just not myself, that my inner child, the little one I have inside me, which is a whole other conversation we'll probably get into, but like understanding the needs of that little one inside of you is so important, because a lot of times that inner child can start running the show. And of course, we don't want a child running our marriage, right? We don't want a child running our business. But like when I get triggered, taken out, scared, pissed off, upset, it's always a good opportunity. Like, oh, what does he need? Like he wants to go out for ice cream and go play at the park. And I'll literally take my grown ass to the park and with some ice cream.
Good for you.
Like, yeah, like
he wants to feel safe.
Yeah. Like I'll make that a practice. But yeah, to get in, she'll check in with my inner child. And one thing we do, which I think is important and it's a good practice for any couple, is what we call set the table. A lot of times when we have a challenging conversation to have, we kind of ambush our partner on it, or it comes out in complaint or comes out in an argument. So we have a practice where we call it set the table, is inviting your partner into the conversation. Hey, when would be a good time for us to talk about, XYZ? Because it gives them an opportunity to prepare and not immediately throw a defense up, and just have a conversation and partnership with each other.
John Gottman has the soft startup, which is, hey, baby,
Yeah.
I've got something important to talk to you about.
Yep.
Is now a good time? And they have freedom to say yes or no. Because so often and if the answer is no, then when can we talk? But so often we blindside our partner because we can't deal with our own emotional state. And then we just unload on them, and they're not in a position to hear us because they're tired, they're stressed, they're thinking about work, they've had a glass of wine or two, and that's never going to go well. So you're trying to set yourself up for the best chances of success that you can in these conversations.
Right. And, I think ultimately is having the conversation be about curiosity, right? Is being able to listen and understand where they're at versus fight, defend, or justify, right? It's regardless of, whether they're right or wrong, which I don't think is even a space, it's still their experience of the relationship. Yeah. And, if being committed to your partner in that way, it's an opportunity to understand really where they're at. And one of the most fundamental needs that I think many women have is they want to be understood. They want to be heard. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be fixed, right? They don't want us to fix them.
Validated.
Yeah.
And I agree with Jerry Reel's belief that there's no place in relationship for objective reality. In other words, it's not about who's right and wrong. It's about seeing, hearing, and validating your partner, understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm still working on.
Yeah. Which goes and you will, right? That's
a lot of these skills are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hate that phrase. It's your work. Damn it.
Yeah. It's hard.
The work's painful. I don't want to do the work.
Right. Right.
That was a trigger for me. Jory said that once. It's your work. I'm like, mother.
Yeah. You're right. And I don't want to hear it. Yeah.
I hate it when you're right.
Yeah. Having a powerful partner, there's a consequence. Yeah. But it goes back to it's just the invitation is, get curious about, what gets driven up in you, and, is it ultimately serving you? What's there to take on? What's there to notice? What's there to heal? What's there to share? And, ultimately it's going to better your experience of life all around.
Yeah. Well, Bob, this has been a hell of a conversation.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this greatly, and thank you so much. Where can people get a hold of you or find your book? Barnes & Noble?
Yeah, my book's Barnes & Nobles. I'm very active on social media. So if you Google my name, I'll pop up quite a bit. So I'm pretty easy to find. Okay.
And then if you want, we'll put the website and things in the podcast notes.
Yeah. Conlin Coaching, CONLIN coaching.com is my main website.
That's what I was looking for. Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Yep.
And anything else that you want to wrap up with?
No, man. Thanks for having me on. This was a great convo. It was deep and fast. And man, wishing you all the love and healing for your eye, man, for your vision.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And appreciate you having you on. This was a heck of a conversation, as I said. And that is it for this episode of The Evolved Caveman. If you loved this episode, please feel free to rate, review, and share with your friends. If you didn't like it, you don't have to do a damn thing. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.